Welcome back to Matty Loves Movies, and if you're here for the first time, welcome. If you're here because you were expecting to see Cinema Soapbox, the premiere episode of Cinema Soapbox, as promised, there was a production delay, so we are having to push that, but I promise you will get it in the next couple weeks. We don't have it ready and available yet, but it's coming. So I decided to make this video, and this is the one you get today. With Halloween done and dusted, I decided to go through and talk about some standouts from my spooky season watching. I don't do a 31 days of Halloween like some people do. I have in the past, but my late sister's birthday is August 30th, and she always started her spooky season on her birthday. That's when it started, and then it went straight through Halloween. And since she's passed away, I've kind of taken that and incorporated it into my season, my spooky season. And every year on her birthday, as I'm memorializing her, I start my spooky season watches because she loved horror movies. So I'm watching those to honor her anyway, and just take it straight through. I did watch 93 titles between August 30th and October 31st. 93 spooky titles. Some of them were series. You can actually go to my letterbox at MattmanXIII to see the list of the spooky season movies I watched. I'll put a link for you to get there quickly. I watched 92 plus a series that was not on Letterboxd, so that makes 93. I wasn't able to log that one, so it's not on that list. But I will talk about it. Before we get too far into this, if you hear my dog in the background whining, I'm not neglecting him. It's storming pretty bad here right now, and he refuses to put his dainty little paws on the grass outside, so he needs to go, but I've taken him like 5 times in the last hour, and he just won't. He's just, nope, back in. So if you hear him whining, I'm not neglecting him. He has been given his opportunities. I told you, we can go out after. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go through a couple categories, and we talk about my favorites, and in some cases least favorites of these 93 titles that I watched over spooky season. I'm not going to talk about all of them. We're just going to talk about a few here and there based on the categories. But so first thing I want to talk about is we're going to get the negativity out of the way first. This is really the only negative category I've got, and that is the most disappointing. And those are some of the options that I have here. Some of the things I watched that were most disappointing. Madam Web. Which actually we did a frame wreck episode over on the Dill Pickle Movie Network about Madam Web. It's one that I actually enjoy a little bit just because of the badness, and there's a lot of really bad stuff in it. Curse of Chucky, which did not seem to really understand why we like these movies in the first place. It definitely missed the mark for me. Babysitter Killer Queen, considering how much I really, really liked The Babysitter, the first Babysitter movie, and considering the actors that were in this one. I mean, Jenna Ortega, she's amazing. I really love her, was in this, and it just did not, it didn't work for me. The writing didn't work for me. I didn't really care for the direction it went. But the biggest disappointment for me is Hell House LLC 3, The Lake of Fire. I really like the first Hell House LLC movie. It's a kind of a found footage. It is a found footage movie. The second one is also found footage, but they do change it up a little bit in terms of how they present it, just a little bit. And that one's not as good either, but it's miles better than this one. This one relied far too much on the first two, so much as they were showing clips of the first one, and in order for anything to be scary, they had to attempt for things to be scary, they would cut in things from the other one to just kind of remind you this is what we're referencing, but it just didn't really work. But that was number one on my most disappointing. We're going to get into the more positive stuff, but my next category does have a few negatives in it. So let's start with the 2024 films, the 2024 films that I watched for my spooky season. Off the bat, the ones that I want to mention but aren't among my favorites are Joker, Folie à Deux. Not the super spookiest, but it was on the list of things that I wanted to watch for the spooky season. And as someone who actually liked that movie, at least liked it more than a lot of my contemporaries, it is still pretty low for me. I mean, it's a movie I enjoyed, but by no means best of the season and certainly, or the year, and certainly not the best of spooky season for me. Speak No Evil, it's actually one that I ended up liking more than I thought I would, because I really liked the original film that this one was a remake of, and I was like, why even do that? That the other one exists, and recently, like it was what, 2019, 2020 film, I think, something like that. It was very recent, and I just didn't understand why they were redoing this film. So I went and watched it. James McAvoy's great. The whole Scoot McNairy, anytime he gets a role is a positive for me, because I really like him. Everybody in that film was really good. And then they changed up how the ending was from the first one, which a little bit feels like, well, I mean, it kind of feels like definitely an Americanized or at least westernized. No, I guess westernized doesn't work, because the original was European. But I don't know, just more Hollywood ending. I really liked the other ending. Kind of ends on a downer, and which you want in a film every once in a while. This new one ends differently. I'm not going to spoil it or anything, but I actually enjoyed that I had a different ending from the other one. Like, I've seen the other one, so the fact that they changed it up. They did enough changes in this to kind of justify its existence, and it wasn't a bad movie by any stretch, but it just isn't one of my favorites of the year or the season. And then lastly, on the kind of the not my favorites, is The First Omen. I actually really dug this movie for the most part, but then when they start tying it into the original The Omen movie, they make a point to make sure that it is a direct prequel, but they change the continuity enough that it makes it not make sense for it to be a prequel to the original Omen. So that one didn't work super well for me either. But again, I did like it. It was good. It wasn't among my favorites. So, but among my favorites are, I did like Smile 2. Not as much as the first Smile, but which dealt a lot with generational trauma, and I really, really liked kind of the messaging and the style that they did it. This one follows a lot of that too, and I do like it. It just, the second time didn't have the same effect on me as the first time, but I did enjoy it. And Naomi Scott, who was the best part of the Aladdin live action remake, definitely kills it in this movie. So I did enjoy that. Next is Beetlejuice. I grew up with Beetlejuice, the first Beetlejuice movie, and I thought the second one was definitely a fitting sequel. Was it overlong? Sure. Was there too many plots that just kind of went nowhere or were solved really, really quickly? Yeah. Was it a little much? Sure. Was it awesome? Yeah, I loved it. Next is Late Night with the Devil, which I loved. I love a movie that's presented, it's almost a mockumentary, almost found footage, but it presents it as like this thing. If they're saying all these people saw this episode of this show, and this is how it works, I think it's really great. David Dastmalchian needs more starring roles, and based on how well he did in this and how many people really like it, I could see that happening in the future sometime soon. One of my top 3 favorite movies of the whole year, is I Saw the TV Glow. It's just, there's a lot of it that I find relatable, even though, it's definitely this really great trans allegory about what it is to be stuck in this world where you don't belong, like that. It's a really great message and metaphor within that. And as a cis man, I don't really identify with that as much, But there's a lot that going on in it that I can identify with. You know, I'm a big fan of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which is obviously the inspiration for the Pink Opaque, the show that they are obsessed with in the movie. There's a lot in it of his journey and their journeys that really, really resonate with me. And it's just a movie that I've watched a few times this year and absolutely love. It has not diminished for me upon multiple viewings. It's only increased. But my number one 2024 film that I watched for spooky season is my number 2 film of the entire year right now, which is The Substance. I love a horror comedy. Horror comedy is one of my favorite subgenres. I absolutely dug this movie. It's just the first 2/3 are funny and there's just this body horror thing happening. I'm not going to spoil any of it, but it's definitely a movie about what it's like to be a woman in the entertainment industry, especially a woman over a certain age. The last third of this movie is just crazy and the hardest I've laughed all year, or in years probably. It's a very, very good movie. It's not for everyone. It's really weird. Both of those last two I said. I Saw the TV Glow and The Substance. Both very, very weird movies. But they are both movies that I absolutely loved and that resonate with me. And I think they'll resonate with you if you can get past the weirdness that's going on in them. So I recommend them. I'm going to try to take my dog out one more time, so bear with me for a moment. All right. I'm back. Just a little wetter. Where was I? Oh, yes. Okay. Hush. Dogs. Next, I wanted to talk about the TV series that I had watched, the streaming series that I had watched. I watched several. I'm not going to talk about all of them right now. In fact, I did a full watch/rewatch, depending on my status with it, of everything that Mike Flanagan has made, except for his student films. So I'm actually going to make a video about that soon, kind of ranking those. But Midnight Club, Haunting of Hill House, Fall of the House of Usher, about Agatha All Along, the Marvel Disney Plus show, which I really enjoyed. I had a really good time with that. I've been singing Ballad of the Witch's Road since that show started. But my number one was, again, a Flanagan thing, which I will talk about in depth later, but that is Midnight Mass. I do think that is up there in his canon. I also watched a few documentaries, some series, some movies. Fanatical, the catfishing of Tegan and Sarah, was really interesting. The Menendez brothers documentary movie, I really enjoyed. Kind of shed some light on some things that I knew about it, but I wasn't intimately familiar with it. So that told me a lot of stuff that was new to me. The scariest movie of 2006, Jesus Camp. I'm not going to elaborate too much on that. I grew up in a similar situation to those kids and triggered a lot of memories for me. It kind of scared me for some of the future of some things. But yeah, it was a really well done documentary. But number one for me is This Is Zodiac Speaking, which is a documentary series on Netflix. I didn't think it was going to tell me anything I didn't already know because I knew a lot about the Zodiac Killer. I'm really into true crime. And instantly they start laying out some evidence against the person I already thought was the Zodiac Killer. This is the guy. It actually ends up shedding a light on a lot of things that nobody really knew until this came out. So there's a lot of stuff in it that's new, and I really enjoyed it. So that's number one for me. Let's talk about some revisits. Now, let me just be clear. There are several that I'm not including as options in this video. Things that I watch with regularity, I just removed from consideration for any of this. So Halloween, which I watch at least once a year, the original 1978 Halloween, I watch it once a year. at least, sometimes more. This year I've watched it 2 or 3 times. The Scream movies, which are pretty much on regular rotation for me. Things like that. A lot of stuff that I watch a lot. Shaun of the Dead is one. Like, there's a bunch of stuff that I watch with regularity that I didn't consider for any of this because that's not really what this is about. But these are things that I revisited that I haven't seen in many, many years, and I'm watching not with fresh eyes because I've seen them before, but with new 40-year-old eyes that I didn't have before, you know? So these are some of them that I've revisited. Either I haven't seen since I was a kid or I haven't seen in a few years. But first one, Monster Squad, which I haven't seen since I was a kid. It doesn't quite hold up for me the way that it used to, just because I've grown up a lot, obviously, because I haven't seen since I was a kid. But a lot of it felt, there was some nostalgia, and a lot of it I understand like what's going on there, and it really does what it's supposed to do really well. Dead Alive, which is one of my favorite horror comedy movies. Peter Jackson, before he was Lord of the Rings Peter Jackson, directed this just gore fest of a horror comedy. So it's also called Brain Dead in some international markets. That one, revisiting that was fun because I haven't watched that in a few years. And in fact, our first episode of Camp Film Camp, we cover that as one of the movies. Signs from M. Night Shyamalan. As someone who struggled with my faith, because I grew up religious and then went a different direction, and I had that whole faith struggle, this movie came out right around the time that kind of started for me. So I have a lot of love for this movie, and it really holds up for me. Like, there's a lot that I really, really like. Say what you will about Mel Gibson, and whatever you say, I'm sure is absolutely correct. For me, this is his best performance. I love what he does in this movie. I love what everybody does in this movie. It's maybe not the best, but it is certainly my favorite M. Night Shyamalan movie. Howard the Duck, which is a movie that I used to watch when I was a kid, and I have revisited this year. I actually revisited it because we did a episode on Marvelous Movie Mondays over on the Dill Pickle Movie Network. I was a guest where we talked about Howard the Duck. It's not a super spooky movie. It qualified for me just because it had like those sci-fi horror elements, some sci-fi horror elements in it, and talking animals. Yeah, but it's one that, even though it's not very good, it's one that I still really, really like. The Omen, the original Omen, is a movie I've always really liked, and it really holds up for me. A lot of creepy imagery, a lot going on. If I liked it less, I might like the first Omen more, but I think that is something that the first Omen has going against it, is how much I like the original Omen. But number one, the one that I was so happy to revisit that I have not seen probably since I was a teenager, at least 20 years, and that is Gremlins 2: The New Batch. Oh my god. This movie is so funny. It's so meta. There's so much rebelliousness in what Joe Dante is doing. He was a student, literally, of Roger Corman. There's so much Corman you can tell in this movie. Like, it just feels like someone who studied under Corman. But yeah, it's very funny. It's its own thing. The original is a better movie, sure, probably. Would I rather watch this one? Absolutely. I love the sequel, Gremlins 2. And last but not least, I just want to go over some discoveries, some things I watched for the first time. And not new movies, but like movies that have been out for a little bit that I discovered for the first time this year during spooky season. Number one, I'm going to talk about M from 1931. It's a dated film, obviously, not from 1931. It's a German dated film. You know, there's some complicated history with that time period with Germany. But what I can tell you is that there is a nuanced discussion happening within the film, even if they're not speaking about it, about compassion, about who is responsible for someone else's life. Like, there's a lot going on in this movie that I absolutely love, and as somebody who prefers compassion over corporal punishment, I really loved the conversation that we had, and it is a complicated conversation. And I love that this movie in 1931 did it that way. They did not have a problem just having this conversation. And they don't say this is the way you should feel. They say this is the question we're asking, and here's what's going on. Number 2 here is the second movie I want to talk about is His House on Netflix. All I will say about this one, because I encourage everyone to go watch it, there's not a lot I can say about it, because it's really about the experience of seeing it for me anyway. I love a movie that made by someone from another culture that shows me something I would have never known about that culture, especially in the horror genre, something that their culture considers scary or horror, and show that to me and open my eyes to that. I really love that, and that's what His House did. Ghost Watch was a BBC One TV thing that TV movie that aired as though it were an actual BBC One program, like live news type program, where they went into this person's house to look for ghosts. And there was a disclaimer at the beginning saying that it was fiction, but another show on a different channel ran after this show started. And so a lot of people that came over didn't see the disclaimer and thought that what was happening on screen was actually happening, which is delightful. But the film, I actually really, really loved. It's something that I really enjoyed. I also saw Freaks. Roger Ebert said that movies are a compassion or an empathy machine. This movie fully embraces empathy machine. It's just such an empathetic movie. The movie's called Freaks, but they treat them like people. So it's real. I really enjoyed that. Seed of Chucky. I really like the Child's Play movies. This one I hadn't seen. Weirdly, 2004 trans-affirming movie, which is awesome and something you didn't see a lot back then, which I really loved, and it made me really, really like that movie. Return of the Living Dead. This was my first time seeing it again over on Camp Film Camp. We cover this movie as well. I really liked this movie, and was disappointed that it had taken me so long to find it. But number 1, Vera Drew's People's Joker is a movie that I discovered. And yes, some will say, but that's a 2024 movie. Well, it originally debuted in 2021 and only is just now being distributed wide. So I chose to include it in the discoveries because this had a profound effect on me. This coming-of-age trans story using my favorite fandom, the Batman fandom, using Jokers and Harley Quinns as almost as a gender, and it's wacky, it's zany, it's just the right kinds of messy, it's unhinged, and I absolutely loved it. It's weird. It's, again, I'm gonna say it like with those other ones that I really loved from this year. It's weird. Just know that when you're going in, but if you can embrace it for what it is, it's a really spectacular piece of autobiographical nonsense from Vera Drew. I look forward so much to what she's going to do in the future. But that's the movies that I watched, or a lot of the movies that I watched for spooky season. What did you watch this year? What did you love? What did you not like? What from these categories would you say is your number 1 in these categories, or some of these categories? What do you want to talk about? Be sure to like and subscribe if you liked this. And stay tuned because, as I mentioned before, Cinema Soapbox is coming. Camp Film Camp is going to have a brand new episode this month revolving around campy sports movies. But yeah, let me know. What did you watch? What did you enjoy? What do you love? Talk to me.